wanted to take a moment first to allow Ms. Susan Deffeldorf to welcome the league who is co-sponsoring this particular event.
Thank you, Roger. I'm with the League of Women Voters, and we are thrilled to be co-sponsoring this event with Roger's group. There's a number of members of the league here today. As you probably all know, we are a political but nonpartisan group which believes in fostering public education and public participation in democratic processes, and for that reason we're happy to be here. We do not take positions on candidates or parties. After studying consensus, we do take positions on issues. We would like to invite anybody who's interested in our organization to talk to one of us wearing these badges or to consider joining our organization. Again, we're happy to be hosting Sheriff Krebs today. Thanks.
I'm off to a bad start because I have to apologize. I forgot the milk for the coffee. I do want to take a moment, though, to introduce San Juan County Sheriff Juan Krebs to you. Sheriff Krebs is an Islander by family history, but not an Islander himself. He actually, after graduating from high school, spent his time in the Marine Corps, and in 2006 decided to become a deputy here in San Juan County, from which we are from. And his talk today is going to give him the time that he needs to explain what he thinks about the Sheriff's Department and his responsibilities. Then we'll take a little break, and we'll have some refreshments and coffee without milk, and then we'll have a question and answer for Sheriff Krebs. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. So, coffee without milk, the break might be shorter than normal, I guess. First of all, I just want to say thank you all for having me here, and thank you for voting for me and putting me in office. You know, some of the things that are probably the most important to me within the Sheriff's Office is, I talked a lot about it on the campaign trail, and I'm not going to go back and kind of rehash everything from the campaign trail, but some of the things that I've really worked hard to do in the first 4 months in the office is to work on the respect and the trust between the Sheriff's Office and the community. A lot of things have happened that have influenced the way people think of law enforcement with Ferguson and New York and all that. I think having that respect and that trust within the Sheriff's Office, between the Sheriff's Office and the community, Sheriff's Office business members, just us and society is vitally important. And I know it's not the same in San Juan County as it is in Ferguson or even on the mainland. We're pretty special here. So I think of the two, to me, you look at the difference between the respect and the trust. Respect is something that I think is given freely by most people. When you see a cop who wears a uniform, you trust, or you respect the uniform, you respect the person because of what he does. But trust, based on the events in Ferguson, the events in New York and around the country, is a lot more easily lost and really hard to gain back. So the things that I'm doing to kind of build that community trust back is get my officers back out on the streets. And I've heard a lot of positive remarks from the community, both Orcas, Lopez, and San Juan. Our officers are out walking around town more again and back out on the foot patrols, which is something that I was I put a lot of emphasis on during my campaign, during my tenure as a law enforcement officer here. I enjoy getting out and walking around. So I asked my deputies to do that. Getting back out and knowing the community, making positive contacts with people is pretty important. It's building those relationships that are not the type when you call 911 or you call the sheriff's office and you come out, you have an emergency, we have a contact with the law enforcement, the police officers contact the people, contact you, the citizens, and I want the deputies to be more positive contacts, more non, how do I word it? Yeah, I guess less adversarial. It's more just, walk up to you on the street, shake your hand, talk to you, not when you're calling us, but when we're out and about, just meeting and greeting people. Like the farmer's market, I want my people to be out at the farmer's market. I go to the farmer's market and I walk around and I talk to people there. Most of you, if you've gone to the farmer's market, have probably seen me there. That's pretty important. Building that trust between the community and us will help out tremendously when we do make a mistake. And mark my words, we will make mistakes. We're human, just like anybody else. But it's minimizing those mistakes and doing everything we can to prevent mistakes. That's important too. Training is something I put a lot of emphasis on as well. We really front-loaded the first part of this year, probably more so than I intended, with a lot of people gone away at different avenues of training, things that have been kind of lacking in the past, crime scene investigations, public contacts, talking to people. We're putting a lot of emphasis into this boat program with boat training. So by having better training, better prepared deputies, that will also help us do our job better. I also put into place, when I first took office, the first thing I did was I actually went around and I swore all my deputies in with an oath of office. We all take an oath of office. I took an oath of office. It was in the newspaper. You probably saw pictures, if you read the paper, you saw a picture of me standing up there, raising my hand, swearing in my oath of office. To me, that is the most important aspect, the most important part of my job is that oath of office. That is what binds me and holds me to do what it is that I do. And as such, I went around to all my deputies, I swore them in, made them all raise their right hand. They all took the same oath of office I did. I put a mission statement, a vision statement, and a value statement in place, which we've never had before. Everybody has received a copy of it, they all signed it, and I gave it all to them. So they're all being held to the same standards that I'm being held to, which is very important to me. I hold myself to very high standards, and I hold everybody else that works for me to the same high standards. Relationships, I'm building the relationships not with just the community, with the Prevention Coalition, the schools, the other county offices, entities, DVSAS. I attend pretty much every council meeting, not council meeting, committee meeting, coalition meeting, or just meeting of groups of people that I possibly can. And I've spent a lot of time doing that the first 4 months of my office, and that's something that I'll continue to do. It's important to me. You elected me for a reason. You elected me to be there. You elected me to be in contact with the people, with the community, and that's something that I take very, very seriously. Like today, I'm here today, and as I've told Roger, I will come to any of these that he would like, and anybody else that wants to invite me to talk to their groups of people, I'll be more than happy to do that. Working with the other first responders is also another very big priority of mine. Working with fire and EMS is something that's been kind of lacking here the last year or so. We've had a boat, as many of you have probably seen, sitting down at the port down there. That's a very big part of our office. The boat cost about $650,000. And it's pretty much sat down there at the port. So from day one, when I came into office, the very first thing I did was I put my lead boat guy, Herb Crow from Orcas Island, and our new deputy, Zach Reimer, who is part of the Wilson clan, married into the Wilson clan on the island. He's a new deputy, came from Whatcom County. He was their number 2 boat guy. I put both he and Herb together, tasked them both with working with fire and EMS to put a boat program together so that fire and EMS will buy back into the program. That program is now about a week away from launching officially, with fire, EMS, and everybody back on board. They've all had a say in the policies and the procedures and the training guidelines, and everybody's very happy with it. So that's something I'm pretty proud of, to get that up and going in 4 months. I've worked very hard on our policy manual, which we have not had any kind of serious policy manual update since 1992. We've had a policy manual, the county bought a Lexapol policy manual about 5 or 6 years ago, and I'm now working through that page by page by page to implement the policies. I'm rolling them out slowly. policy by policy, really, to make sure they're policies that fit and are appropriate to this community. When I do, that policy manual will be online and available to all of you who would like to see it. We're going to revamp our website, so all of our information is accessible to the community. Transparency is very important to me, and I think with nobody having access to that, it kind of hides that transparency a bit, and that goes back to the trust that I talked about. If you don't know what to expect from us, or you can't get the information from us, or whatever, the lack of transparency breeds a lack of trust, and we don't want that. I revamped our public records program, put a different person in charge of that, working closely with the county, so public record requests are flowing smoothly. Just to, again, go back and help out with the transparency issue. So, probably what's next on my agenda is just getting ready for summer. I don't know what we're going to do about the traffic problem. Everybody asks me about it. That's kind of a town issue. I'm working with the town to try to figure something out, but I don't have a lot of confidence in that in the reservation system at this point in time. But we'll see. Yeah, I guess just get ready for the tourists coming in. It's going to be big. There's going to be a lot of people coming into this county, and getting my guys up and ready, and keeping the streets as safe as humanly possible. This month is Distracted Driver Awareness Month. I put a press release out. We are going to have emphasis patrols out, looking for people talking on their cell phones, running stop signs while talking on their cell phones, which I hear a lot of. So that's going to be going on this month. The 4th of July always seems to bring a lot of people, and always seems to bring a few issues in. Most of them are driving issues, most of them are tourist-related issues. So I'm sorry. Let me just shut that off. I've had an open door policy. I've had a lot of people come into my office. I've had a lot of people call me on the phone. One thing that I'm really looking forward to doing, or exploring a little more, I had a lady call me about a mounted, ladies mounted posse with horses. Yeah, she mentioned it, and I thought, really? But, the more we talked, I think it's a good idea. I really like it. They do well in the parades. They do well at the fairgrounds, 4th of July. It's just, and it buys community involvement. I love the fact that the community would love to be involved with us. That's something I promote, that I really look forward to. I had a young high school girl come into my office Thursday wanting to start a police explorer program, a junior explorer program. And she went through all the work, all the effort. She did a lot of research on it. And I absolutely am 100% in favor of that as well. So that's something you might see here in the future. We're going to have a booth at the fair, and I would look for those junior explorers if we decide to go that way. Man the booth and help out with the booth. I've got, right now, I have the former Undersheriff John Zerby, and one of my deputies from Orcas is going the end of this month to a reserve officers coordinator program in Wenatchee. And they're going to come back and hopefully going to put a reserve deputy program together for us, so we can have reserve deputies again. Members of the community helping out with the sheriff's office. It just creates that hand-to-hand cohesion that I talk a lot about and promote strongly. So that's kind of the state of where the sheriff's office is right now. Everything that I do, everything that we do, we're gearing it towards making us better, more accessible, and just, hopefully doing our job better and better and better. And I told everybody, my undersheriff just walked in, Brent Johnson, and I've told him, and I've told everybody, the day I stop trying to get better and better and better is the day I retire, so. And that's not for a long time. Yeah.
Animal control.
Yes, John Zerbe is our former undersheriff, John Zerbe. I spoke with him on day one, pretty close to day one, about coming back and doing that. He's a big animal lover. The thing that's really good about John is John, one, has 35 plus years of law enforcement experience. He knows how to build cases. He knows how to work with the prosecutor's office already. And if there is an animal neglect or an animal abuse case, he can put that together. And likewise, if it's an allegation of animal abuse and neglect and it's not a case of animal abuse and neglect, he also knows how to tell the difference between that as well. So,
Is there going to be an officer, so is he the designated?
yes, he will be a special deputy in charge of that. Yes.
There's a petition going around about an animal control officer, and I didn't hear anything else beyond that petition.
Yeah, I was supposed to be contacted by, from my understanding, that faction of people who were really behind the animal control position kind of split apart. And Jen Rigg was one of them. Jen and her mom from the what's her mom's name at the shelter? Can't remember her mom's name. What's that?
Jamie Ellsworth.
Yes, they were one half, and then the other half split off, and they've not contacted me. They said they were going to contact me, haven't. And maybe just the fact that we put John in charge of the animal control program has given them confidence enough to know that, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I'm an animal lover, I'm a dog lover, and I don't want to see any animal whatsoever neglected or abused either. I mean, that's important, so.
If you had unencumbered funds, where would you put them at this point in time?
Where would I put them right now?
Where would you spend them, yes, if you had? So many police departments are going different ways, I was just curious.
Yeah. DV SAS right now is they're struggling with their funding. The Prevention Coalition is struggling to a point. Island Rec, I put it towards Island Rec. I mean, Island Rec for what they do for the kids of this community and being in law enforcement and dealing with the youth of this community for so long, having something for them to do that's constructive and is teamwork building and morale building and self-esteem building is just vitally important. That's where I would put it.
Thank you.
And that's not, believe me, that's not a plug for Island Rec. I didn't come in here for it, but I'm just trying to think of any organization that has to do with the juvenile and the youth of this community, whether it's the high schools, the STEM program, the art program. Island Rec just happens to be a very large part of that. I mean, you're asking me personally, that's where I would put it. If you're asking if the sheriff's office has the money, then that's different. So.
Are we in the question period now then, Roger? Apparently.
Yeah, I guess so. Hold on.
Yeah. I'm with the derelict vessel program. I spend a lot of time on the water. And I see about 25% of the boats with expired registrations. And I was thinking of maybe a program in conjunction with the Sheriff's Department to give people a window of opportunity to bring their registration up to date instead of just giving them a ticket, which I understand is about $257, which wouldn't go over well. But if we gave them a window, I think we could get a lot of people to bring their boats up. And according to some of the state statutes, that money is supposed to come back here.
It does.
I don't know if it ends up in the general fund someplace, but if it does, then that would be an added source of revenue, because quite simply, you wouldn't go around with your plates on your cars. Right? So it's the same thing. So I'd be willing to help and donate and information and help get that going if that's of interest to you.
Well, I'll say two things. One, let's talk about that, because I would love to talk about that with you at a later date, more in depth.
Yeah.
Two, I have a form that I've created for exactly that. The vessels out there who are derelict or not derelict, derelict and not getting their registration. A lot of them, they're just sitting on the water. You don't come up and see your boat every couple of years or whatever, and the boat sits there and the registration gets expired, or you only use it once or twice a year and you don't think about it. It's just the registration expired. So the form basically gives them the opportunity, one, alerts them, lets them know their vessel registration is expired, and tells them the amount of the fee, and also, or the penalty for being expired, but more importantly, gives them the opportunity to come in and get it taken care of. Because it's not about writing the ticket, it's about getting the registration. Because, and the registration fund does come back to the sheriff's office, the vessel registration. A portion of those registration fees comes back to us, which allows us to continue on the water. So it is important.
My understanding.
Hold on.
Oh,
Jack had his hand up just a second.
Could you expand a bit on the reserve officer program, how that would work, what would they get training, what would be their authority, and some examples of what they would do if we're not this?
The reserve officer program, they have arrest authority. The training is a 270-hour class that, I believe it's 270, 280 hours of classwork that teaches you basically everything about law enforcement on kind of a part-time basis. Their authority is they have full arrest authority while they are on the job doing their business versus law enforcement. A deputy, a full-time deputy has arrest authority 24/7. Reserve is only while you're on the job doing what you're doing. Some of the things that they would do, it could be anything as little as you want to block traffic in a parade, you want to work the parade, you want to work the rock the dock, like John Zerby loves working rock the dock.
I love having it.
Yeah, and that's, he loves doing that. So I mean, if we have people that just want to mingle about in the crowd and talk to people at the rock the dock, or just, keeping people back and safe on the 4th of July parade, Memorial Day parade, whatever parade. Or they could actually go out, ride with deputies and be a second person in the car, a second set of eyes, or just back up in the car. They can also go all the way up to being completely field trained out to where they could operate the car themselves, be alone in the car, and do everything that a normal deputy would do. They're just a reserve volunteer, basically, not getting paid for it.
You're an elected official like the county council is.
I am.
You do not report, however, to the county council. The county council, except for budgetary issues, the county council has regular meetings, weekly meetings, and it has, public input and dialogue, but I don't see that with the police department. I'm wondering if thought would be given to having some type of, not weekly or monthly, but maybe quarterly meeting with the public, to inform the public about issues that are, in the forefront in the news, and having a dialogue about some of the things we're probably going to be talking about today. But just have an ongoing dialogue that people can put on their calendar and know that they can attend and learn about what's going on here with the policing.
Yeah, I'm going to kind of get off a little bit. I'm going to revamp our website completely. And on that website will be maybe a calendar. If people would even come, you can sign up for a newsletter or whatever. I haven't got that far yet. But I agree completely. One of the things I talked about early on was having regular town hall forums, at least 1 or 2 a year on each island. If we need to have more, we can have more. It's just the first part of the year has been getting everything straightened out within the office first. And then we can have more meetings like this, if that's what you're talking about. Are you talking about just like coffee with the sheriff, or,
Well, just an opportunity for you to present what you think the public's interested in. They can ask questions if there's something else they want to know about.
Yeah, that's a great
Just
idea.
a dialogue.
Yeah, and I'm all 100% for that, absolutely, and I'll look into that. We can certainly make that happen. And if you see me walking around town, walk up to me, shake my hand, talk to me. I'm easy to get along with. So.
If someone is undocumented and if they're subject to abuse at home, domestic violence, do they need to be afraid to call you?
They don't need to be, but they are. And I have a number of friends from EMS and just on the island who are Hispanic and are kind of in with that crowd of people. They're not in with that crowd of people, but Humberto Orozco is one of them. He's an EMT with EMS. Very well known to everybody in the trailer park. Works for, does groundkeeping, landscaping. He's also a very active EMS volunteer. He is kind of my in with the Hispanic crowd. And that's one of the things I would love to do, is to kind of break that barrier. Unfortunately, there are a fair amount of undocumented immigrants here. And because of that, they're afraid that if they come in and report something to us, that we're going to immediately hold them and deport them, and that's just not the case. There's federal case law that prevents it, and it's not really the right thing to do, I don't think, to begin with.
So then to follow up on that, just on that question, so if someone, sorry, if somebody.
No, sorry.
So if someone does come in and reports any kind of crime or domestic violence, that they're a victim, where they're a victim, then do you do any sort of inquiry, they're not a defendant or a victim, any into their immigration status?
No. If we arrest somebody, so if there are two illegal or undocumented individuals, and one's the victim, one's the suspect. If we arrest the suspect on assault 4, assault 2, whatever case we're arresting them for, then yeah, we do a check on them. And then if INS wants to come and pick them up prior to us releasing them, then they can. Otherwise, once their court date's here, and if they make bail, then we release them. We cannot hold them, or we won't hold them. So, Steve.
So I get this question a lot, actually, and a lot of the concern is not about the victim, it's actually about the offender. Because these victims don't want to see the husband, father, their children get deported.
And they're the ones bringing home the bacon too.
Yeah, and so can you speak to that? What do you tell victims about what may happen to their husbands? And I'm using the generality here.
That's a good question. I can only think of one time personally that we've done that. Most of the time, it's somebody who does something extremely violent. They're just not good people that we've taken out of here.
There was a time when that was, if they were ever booked in jail, which of course, as you know, but everybody else probably doesn't know, on the assault TV, if it happens within 4 hours, it's a mandatory arrest. So they were booked in jail, there was an inquiry made to the Department of Homeland Security. That's no longer true, or what's the current policy?
Yeah, we still make the inquiry, but if they are not willing to come and pick them up, and quite often they're not, because of manpower, political reasons, whatever. If they are not able to come, or they don't come, then they're released back into the community. And, it is what it is. We are not allowed to hold them, even if we wanted to. We couldn't hold them.
Ron, I think this question here relates to the thing called secure communities. And I'm gathering from the answer that we heard here, that is not a high priority with your department then.
No, that's not true at all.
Wait,
What are you talking about, security of our community?
No, secure communities is a specific
Are you talking
program.
about the immigration issue?
Yeah, that's the one I'm talking about.
The immigration issue is not something that falls under our jurisdiction anyways. The crimes that the immigrants commit, or just people in general commit, falls under our jurisdiction, but it's not my jurisdiction to go out and look for people who are illegal aliens.
Well, I'm far from an expert on it, but my understanding was that Homeland Security was trying to get the local law enforcement basically to subscribe to working with them on that. But it was supposed to be voluntary.
Yeah, they've tried.
Okay. That's good enough, thank you.
And I went up and had a meeting with them, and I agreed with some of the things they said, and I didn't agree with other things they said. And, that's fortunately because I am the sheriff, I'm elected, they can't make me do anything.
You say you make an inquiry. What is the inquiry you make to INS?
Just their citizenship status.
Okay.
And a lot of times generally speaking, the ones they're interested in, I believe, it's my understanding, the ones they're interested in are the ones that they have dealt with in the past. Like they have had a history, or they are looking for them. Not just the gentleman who...
If you arrested me, would you do the same thing?
No.
Okay, well, I don't quite see the point of doing it. I mean, you're profiling is what you're doing.
Well, no, we ask everybody. We know who, if we arrest a Canadian citizen, because we identify you, and if you're a Canadian citizen, we do an inquiry on them as well. And part of that inquiry is notifying the consulate, the Canadian consulate, as we do the Mexican consulate. Being a foreign national, you have certain rights, and contacting the consulate is one of them. So we contact the Canadian consulate as well, and the Chinese
So
consulate.
you do it for, you only wouldn't do it for me because you know who I am, or?
No, because you're a U.S. citizen.
But you have to find that out first, how do you know that?
Yeah.
No?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, no, I get what you're saying.
So, Ron, what are the criteria that you use before you send somebody's name into INS or Homeland Security? What's the criteria?
Well, the first thing, we generally, people will tell us whether they're illegal or not.
They will?
Yeah. Because they want to contact their consulate. And if you're a U.S. citizen, then you're not going to contact your consulate. Not always, but I mean, that's my experience with it. But honestly, like I said, I'll get you in a second. The vast majority of the undocumented people in this community are good people. The vast majority, 99% of them. They work hard, they're trying to obey the laws. But the ones that don't, the ones that are problems, are the ones that we deal with.
So I'm also an advocate for the Hispanic community, and I had a case, just to put this in very simple terms, about 5 years ago. There was a simple domestic, theoretically abuse situation. The police came. They arrested the suspect. The victim, which was the stepdaughter, immediately dropped the charges, but he had already been arrested. So that set in motion, they contacted ICE and whatnot, and they came and picked him up and they took him down to Tacoma. And it was immediate. So my question is, have things changed from then till now, that it's not immediate, that they come and get him?
Yeah, we rarely see ICE up there.
Okay.
Rarely.
Okay.
That, and this is all evolving and changing on a federal level as well. The feds are putting out new policies and regulations daily, and with the presidential change or the congressional change, I think that'll change again. It's constantly changing and evolving. Hold on, Roger, I'll get you next here.
Jeff, how many deputies which speak Spanish and who are learning?
We have 2 deputies that speak Spanish, Deputy Menjivar on our island on San Juan, and Deputy Taylor, Sergeant Taylor on Lopez. And we have 2 deputies who have expressed a desire to learn. I can't make them learn, so. As far as how many are learning, none as far as I know. But we have had a couple deputies express that desire to learn.
How does translation work then?
Well, we either call Deputy Menjivar, Sergeant Taylor, Joe Tyne, who's sitting in here, he's a court interpreter. We've called him a number of times on the phone. Short of not being able to get of those 3, I've called Umberto at home, and he's translated as well. A lot of times there's a family member there that can translate. Most of the time there's a family member. They have a child in school, they translate just fine. If it's a domestic violence issue, we try to keep the kids out of it. That's tough when you're having the 10-year-old translate for mom, whose mom's telling the 10-year-old to tell me that she was, hit, slapped, punched, burned, whatever. So that's when we get Joe or another Spanish-speaking individual involved.
Just to comment on the child thing, I think as a professional interpreter, you're walking on thin ice when you're getting a kid to interpret.
Oh, yeah.
Aside from domestic violence.
Yeah.
I wanted to go to stop for some coffee and then have Terry Rush moderate your questions.
Okay.
Okay?
No.
So why don't we stop, get a cup of coffee?
To be moderating the question section, but Ron did such a good job on his own that I just stayed back there and enjoyed the conversation. But instead of ad-lib this section, I will go ahead and moderate it. Really, the only thing I'm going to do different is I'll probably repeat the questions when they are asked so that everybody in the back can hear it. But beyond that, why don't we just, did you have anything you wanted to add based on questions from the Half time or?
No, we're good.
Okay.
So, Ron, what's the status of the illegal drug trade in terms of being able to buy heroin and meth?
Again, what's the status of the illegal drug trade right now?
Well, it's
Flourishing.
the same as it's always been. It's there. We're working diligently on it, and we've come up with a couple of new ideas that are fresh ideas that we're going to implement to battle that. But, I mean, have we gotten rid of the drugs since the 4 months I've been in office? Or the 4 years prior to that, or the 40 years prior to that? No. And unfortunately, probably never will. I mean, they've been around for thousands of years, and they'll be around for thousands of years. That doesn't mean we can't battle it and fight it every step of the way.
Question in the back.
As citizens with neighbors that may or may not be participating in this illegal activity, is there something we can do to assist, or should we just stay out of it? Because it's a little disconcerting to have it keep seeing it day in and day out. We hope that you're doing something, but we're not sure. So is there something we can do?
Call me.
Okay.
Or come in. I had two ladies come in yesterday who have her neighbors doing the exact same thing. She came in and reported it.
Because, I mean,
We can at least
we
start
could
paying
give you
attention.
cameras, we could give you photos in the middle of the night. I mean, there's a lot of stuff, but we don't know what's appropriate or if it's even gonna help.
Give me a call. It can't hurt.
Okay, thank you.
Along the same line, I noticed that there's a 22-year-old girl from Orcas who was recently pled guilty to possession of heroin, a small amount, in a syringe, loaded syringe, kind of in her brassiere, when they caught her for theft and shoplifting. So that's one kind of, case in point. And I guess I'm just kind of curious as whether you can tell us where does it come from? Where do people get it? Is it alive here in a little, kind of enclave peddling, or do people go off island and get it and bring it back, or how does that work?
That's a hard question to repeat. Could you?
Trying to make it harder.
Couldn't hear the question,
He's
sorry.
wondering where the drugs are coming from. He cited a case recently of a young lady, 22-year-old lady, who was arrested for shoplifting and found heroin on her. She was from off island, who came back to face a previous shoplifting charge and just didn't learn a lesson. So, she's got two of them.
Just to add it, because it seems like from where I sit and cover it, they're usually small amounts that they could get busted with. So
The people who buy from the dealers don't buy in large amounts, they buy in small amounts. The dealers are getting them off island. My guess is, I'm relatively certain of a couple of individuals who are just walking on the ferry and coming back. They could be coming across on a boat, we don't know, because we've never really done any kind of nighttime or evening boat emphasis yet. We're gonna start that. But it's coming from off island. We're not producing heroin on island, so that I'm aware of.
So I just walked out, I'm not sure if I missed anything when I walked back in. So in regards the drug problem, the serious hard drug problem, what are you doing? What have you done to combat it, or to eliminate it, or reduce it, or what are you planning to do?
Pay a lot more attention to it. I mean, I can't give you specifics as far as what we're doing, because that will be a detriment to the program.
Okay.
I am telling you that, I will tell you that we are paying a lot more attention and putting a lot more attention. We know who the players are, and we're paying a lot more attention to them.
Okay, question here.
Yeah, Ron, communications between your department, first responders, Homeland Security, the military, in case of a major disaster, one would think it would be really important that you could all talk to each other.
So the question then is, what are you doing for communications between the various agencies in the case of a disaster?
Well, Brendan Cowan's our DEM guy, and he has that wrapped up pretty well. We have good communication between all the agencies. I met with, as I think I alluded to it earlier, I met with Customs and Border Patrol in Blaine. Spoke with them January, first part of February maybe, and we discussed That, just basically having a relationship there should we need them, whether it's for drug operations or emergency management or oil spill or whatever. Having that line of communication open, talking to their chief who communicates with me, that's really what I'm doing. But Brendan does a very good job of keeping all those lines of communication open and working with all the different agencies, whether it's fire, the fire department, the Red Cross, the ham radio groups.
See, that's, I guess where I was coming from is, do you share a common radio frequency?
We don't share a common radio frequency, but our dispatch center covers all the radio frequencies that are available that people will use in our county. And when they come in, if it's an agency that comes in from the outside,
Right.
they will adapt to our frequencies versus us adapting to their frequencies.
Okay, because then that's something that didn't occur during Hurricane Katrina. Because.
Yeah,
they
I
didn't
think
talk
there were
about
a lot of lessons learned in Hurricane Katrina.
Okay, so I was interested in, we did learn those lessons then.
I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah. Brendan, I have the utmost faith in Brendan, but I'll run that by him and make sure, for my curiosity, because I can't give you an affirmative yes or no answer on that, but I believe that to be the case.
Yeah, question over here.
Many years ago, I don't know, 8 years ago, I had an opportunity or a circumstance where I had to call 911 from Lime Kiln State Park. And I got connected to Canada, as you know, we don't
Rogers.
have good cell connection over there. I'm just wondering, and everything got resolved, I mean, we must have had 10 EMS show up out there within about 10 minutes. But it worked well, but is that an issue that sometimes doesn't work very effectively, that you get routed, you get delays in routing?
If you're on the west side, you're probably almost always going to go to Rogers in Canada.
But can that be a problem, or is it working very effectively from your viewpoint?
It works. Can it work better? Absolutely. If the best bet would be you dial 911, you get our call center. That's the communications issue between the 911 call coming into the dispatch and then dispatch being able to contact the deputies, contact whether it's Orcas Fire or San Juan Fire or any type of fire coverage or EMS coverage out on the west side is difficult at best. And that's something that we at the Chiefs meeting are talking about and tackling right now.
So if I don't live on the west side, but if I did, should I be concerned about that?
No, you shouldn't, because if you dial 911, you're going to get a 911 center. You just need to be aware that they're probably going to have one, ask you where you're calling from, because on their anti-alley, when it pops up on their screen, it's going to show an address or probably something out in the middle of the water, and it's just not going to look right, and they'll ask you where are you calling from. Because the same thing happens with us. And then you'll tell them you're in the San Juan, and they'll stand by, and they'll just hit a button, transfers you right to us within, milliseconds.
Is the broadband initiative of Rock Island, are they factoring in these challenges of communication into what they're doing on the west side?
I haven't even spoken to the Opalco Rock Island people yet. That whole thing is just kind of going down, but I can only think it will help. I mean, you're getting broadband, I would have to think that it would have to help. How, I don't know, because I'm not a tech guy in that way, but I've got to think that when you're improving technology, it's got to get better.
Okay.
Yeah, I have two questions. The first is, why don't they consider putting up some emergency call boxes? They may be a little out of date, but if we had them, every half a mile or something along the west side, you could at least get a hold of a landline that would take you to 911.
They could be moved.
And you don't have to answer that, that's just a suggestion.
Yeah.
The other question has to do, I live on the west side and on a pretty isolated spot, and a lot of times I go home and I'm sitting there taking my afternoon nap and there's somebody out shooting, and there's regular target practice going on somewhere around Mount Dallas, and I don't want to stay out in my yard because I'm not sure what direction it's coming from and how good a shot the person is. What can we do? Is there a designated place that's a target range that the department uses?
So to tackle your first statement, that's something that the county council would have to approve, the call box. I think it's a good idea, maybe. But the county council would have to The second one, call us. We will respond to every single shots complaint and make sure, one, what we do is we make sure they're not drinking, make sure they have a safe backdrop, make sure that they're shooting safely. If they satisfy those, and obviously that they're old enough to be shooting, if they satisfy those, then we can't prevent them from shooting in the county. They just have to be doing it safe and sane. Unfortunately, I mean, we get that a lot of people complain about it. I wish there was a designated, maybe a really nice indoor range, keeps the sound down. It's in one place, would be fantastic. Would everybody use it? Well, maybe if they were made to use it, they had to go there, but then, the council would have to pass an ordinance that would be basically stating you have to spend money in this range. It'd be a mess, but it would be nice if we had a really nice indoor range for everybody's sake.
Along with the shooting, is there any, just to piggyback on that, is there any limit on the type of weapons that are shot? If we hear something that sounds like semi-automatic fire or automatic, just, okay.
Just if it's a concern, call us.
To kind of follow up on that, Sheriff, if it were in your power and you didn't have to consider the limitations, what sort of gun control legislation would you like to see in place?
I think we have plenty of gun control legislation in place now. I think, I am happy with the gun control legislation we have in place right now.
Back in the corner.
Do you have plans for the deputies to wear body cameras, and what's your take on that?
I don't. We're looking at in-car cameras. You look at the cost of all of it, and what are you going to get the most bang for your buck for? Which one's going to do a better job?
Storing all the data?
Yeah, well, and then that creates a whole other host of issues as well, not just storage of data, but I think somebody alluded to it earlier, the release of the data. The public records request right now in this state is a nightmare. And we have individuals in the state who are going around to all the different departments requesting every single piece, every single byte of audio and video footage from the departments since their inception. There's somebody in Seattle, his name is Anonymous, he goes by Anonymous, they don't know who he is. Some people know who he is because he's been interviewed, but he goes by Anonymous. He requested every single piece of written, recorded, and video document from Snohomish County since 1776. And they're going to sink, I mean, they have to comply because it's part of the law, but they're going to sink hundreds of thousands of dollars into, over the years, unless he drops his request, complying with this. And they can bill him for some of it. I think it's 10 cents a page, but audio and video, they can't. And for every second of audio or of video, they say it takes a minute to go through and redact faces. And then they can blur out your face, but now they've got software that will unblur out the face. So really your privacy is not even private. I mean, if you're a victim or you're just there and they blur your face out because you're the victim, they can unblur your face so now your privacy is no longer...
Once it's out of your hands?
Correct.
Once it's requested?
Correct. Yeah, they have software that will go in and actually digitize them, blur out the face so they can't see your face because you're the victim. Or you're a child. Your child is blurred out. But then they'll get the video and they'll hook the software up to it and will unblur the face. And now they've got the full raw video.
So you're just going to equip cameras?
Right now we're going to continue with the in-car dash cameras. That's the majority of our contacts, and honestly in this county that's been the majority of where our complaints come from. I think having higher standards and better training will better equip the deputies to deal with just the person-to-person contacts, which should alleviate 99.9% of the complaints.
Okay.
Roger.
What is the status of the marijuana laws in Washington County? I mean, San Juan County right now.
I don't think they know what the status of it is.
Okay, the question is, what is the status of the marijuana laws in San Juan County?
Yeah,
It's not for sale.
it is. There's Orcas has a place called Token Herb that is open, and I think the county and the state are still fighting through exactly what they want to do and how they want to handle it. As it is now, from a law enforcement standpoint, there is nothing we can do about the businesses selling it unless they're selling it to children or selling it to somebody who otherwise shouldn't be in there buying it.
At best, it's unclear.
It is, yes, at best it is unclear. I'm still trying to get out from liquor control how many times when they come up and inspect the places, because they're supposed to be inspecting them. They're supposed to be inspecting the producers and the retailers. And I've asked them a couple of times now for a report on their inspections, and I've yet to see it, so.
Put in a record.
You know, you're right on with it. That's gonna be my next step. I've done it for other things, so.
A little update on the public records request by Mr. Anonymous. He is now open in the public. I saw him on a panel at the Washington Coalition for Open Government State Conference in Tacoma a month ago.
Okay.
Along with, he's working with the Seattle Police Department. He has withdrawn that comprehensive request. He did it as a provocative thing, saying we've got to sort this out. They're working on a program now in Seattle.
Good. Yeah, his response, I think, at one point was, if they don't want me to do it, they need to change the laws.
The ones that he gets, he's posting on YouTube. So what will be the status of are there dash cam cameras now?
We do.
Are there any cameras that the Sheriff's Department uses?
We do. We have 3 of them.
So if I were to make a public records request for everything that you've recorded on those cameras, what happens?
You have to contact Sally Rogers, who is the county public records clerk, and then it begins the process of us sitting down and going through the video footage and redacting what needs to be redacted and what doesn't need to be redacted.
What do you redact?
Well, if you make an arrest and there's children involved or victims involved, we generally, it's my belief, you redact, you blur out the faces of juveniles, innocents, basically. And then if there's an ongoing investigation, or if it's something that's if it's still currently being investigated by the Sheriff's Office, you won't get any of that because there's still an investigation in process. You only get it after it's gone to the PA's office. Pretty much it seems the rule of thumb with the public records request is give you pretty much everything. So.
If I may, I'd like to sneak a question in on my own. There are many of us who are fairly cynical in the room about there's problems with marijuana and all of that around the schools. So in that context, do you anticipate, or have you seen where it is any worse, or do you think it will be worse as a result of the initiative that legalized marijuana, as far as availability to school students?
You know, that's a good question, and one I am not really prepared to answer. I don't know. I don't think we've seen enough studies on it yet. From just my standpoint, from just as an officer, as a deputy who worked for almost a year under that law, it didn't seem like we saw any more in the school. I mean, I think the kids in the schools who were doing it before are still doing it now. I personally didn't notice any kids who are like, wow, what are you doing that? You're not that type of kid. You really surprised me that you're dabbling in marijuana. I didn't see any of that, but that's just one officer's perspective, not a all-encompassing picture.
I know, I had usually not a sarcastic response, but like, how could it get any worse than it already is? Whether it's legalized and controlled or not. But, okay. Other questions? Back again?
As a retired educator, having watched all the things, particularly the shooting that occurred in Marysville, do we have a plan here for?
We're working on it.
Okay, that's really important to me.
Yeah, that's important to me too, and that's I've spoken with Fred Woods, the principal, a number of times on it, and we had a meeting about a month and a half ago at the school, district school office on exactly that, and it's important to them as well. So yeah, we are working on it, with not just San Juan, with also Orcas, they had a meeting last month about it, and Lopez as well.
I'm sorry.
We're all concerned.
You're working on what specifically?
The school shooting, the active shooter, having a response plan, should something like a tragedy like Marysville or Sandy Hook or something like that.
And you had a question as well, right?
You had mentioned earlier, you get a lot of questions about traffic from people on the street. In particular, I think leading up to the summer season. I'm curious what kind of questions are people thinking that the Sheriff's Department needs to know about traffic? I think I heard you say something about the reservation system.
Most of the people are asking, what are we going to do about it? And, Sheriff, there's nothing I can do about it. I have to enforce what laws are out there. I stopped by yesterday to speak to Duncan. We talked briefly about it. We're talking about possibly rerouting people up Nichols, maybe having people preload at Lot B. I'd like to maybe shut down a couple streets and make them one way only, so you don't have cars coming both ways and cars trying to turn, and that creates a big backlog when somebody's trying to turn right, and they can't turn right because there's cars coming down, and the people behind them are trying to get to the ferry landing. I have some very serious concerns about the summer season, and I think Memorial Day weekend we'll all find out.
And is that because of the reservation system?
Yeah. It's 100%, and that's my concern is the reservation system. And it's simply because when you take a boat that has 144 cars on it, and you figure just throw out there, maybe 44 of the cars are already in line because that's just the type of people they are. They'll get there early and they'll sit and wait for the ferry because they got there 2.5 hours early and walk around town. The other 100 cars don't have to be there until 30 minutes before the ferry leaves. So you get 100 cars coming through the downtown corridor trying to get to the ferry system, mingling with the people trying to go to King's, trying to go to Haley's, got to go to the drugstore, want to go to the movies, just want to shop. That's a lot of cars for the 2 or 3 streets we have down here.
And just a brief follow-up, if you could speak to it. A number of years ago, both the town and the county and Washington State Ferries was contributing a chunk of change for flags. Are they doing that right now? Do you know, or?
No idea.
Okay.
I have no idea. I've been, like I said, working with Duncan. We'll come up with something, I'm sure.
I'm sorry, Scott, a flag, did you say?
Flaggers, safety control officers at a couple different intersections.
Well, Duncan actually talked at one point, well, I'm not going to say it because I don't want to speak for Duncan. But maybe we could figure out some way to get, like I said, traffic control out there at the intersections to stop people and keep it from going.
We had those at one time, didn't we?
Yeah.
Not since I've been there.
Yeah, we had those several years ago.
Well, I take it back. We do have, the ferry terminal people do have a couple of employees that they'll put at the bottom on Front Street and then somebody up at First. They only do that for certain sailings of the day, and that's only to unload cars. That's not to get people down to the ferry landing. That's only during unload. And when unloading is done, they fold their little sandwich board up and move it off the side of the street.
And just be clear that the San Juan County and the town and Washington State Ferries were contributing money to the contractor down there so they could pay for additional safety control at one time, which went away because of budgetary constraints.
Yeah, I don't know.
So for the last few years, they haven't had it.
Didn't the Visitors Bureau have funding for something like this? It was a Visitors Bureau.
Okay, in the back again.
Yeah, my question has been picked up a little bit by, think that could we hire some additional law enforcement officers, maybe just people to be trained as traffic officers, to be over there by the drugstore and maybe be out the next intersection out, and thirdly, might be out around by Lime Kiln Point. I'm afraid I'm going to kill somebody around there, not on purpose, because I drive.
Good to know, Marcia, that's
I told them.
We all heard it.
And invariably, in the summer, there's gonna be 3 or 4 people standing out in the middle of the road taking pictures.
It happens every year.
Yeah, and it's probably the most dangerous place on the island.
It's one of the funniest things I've ever seen.
You know, in order to hire somebody, I can't just hire people.
I know.
I have to have the okay of the council, and then there has to be money in the budget, and they have to allocate funds to my budget for it. The same thing with the town, so.
Maybe the volunteer?
Yeah, you know, that's possible. That thought, actually, as she was saying it, popped into my head. But that's an awful lot to ask of a reserve who is just volunteering his time to, you're no longer volunteering your time, are you talking about the reserve? Yeah, to volunteer your time to, I need you here every day at this time for this length of time. That's no longer a volunteer, that's a job.
And then they get
Okay, we're gonna go back here and then over here, so.
Well, I just think people directing traffic who are not competent make it even worse.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of training involved, I think, to
Directing traffic is not easy. I know, I've done it. It's, you know, I would question whether I'm even competent.
You have to be able to see 4 directions at once.
Yeah, it's not easy.
Yeah.
Well, I would just like to piggyback on that idea that the person that we have in that position is probably going to have to be a higher of the county or the state for public safety reasons, for not only being trained well, but there's liability issues and
Big
such.
liability issues.
So our request for something like that should go not only through the county, but the state. Or specifically through the county.
Yeah, I would think if you started with the county, it's kind of, I mean, you can jump up to the state, but it's really, the county would probably have a whole lot more weight. I mean, you get Kevin Ranker involved, you know, and I say Kevin because he's our guy here, but he's got the weight, and,
Well, if it was a Washington State Ferries employee, it would go state, but if it was just.
oh, I see what you're saying. I thought you were talking going through, okay,
If it's your
okay.
department, it would go through the county.
Yeah. I see what you're saying. I thought you were talking about getting funding from the state.
So those previous folks that Scott was talking about that were hired to work and through that extension that we've got of the ferry services, those are state employees, is that correct?
No,
No, they're county.
no. The people here on the island, they're contracted. It's a private business, they're contracted. The only people that are Washington State ferry employees are the people on the boats and the people in Anacortes.
So where do those monies come through, county?
No, they're contracted through the Washington State Ferries.
State ferries, okay.
Yeah, they're paid for by the state ferries, but they are, the people that stand out there and take your ticket and direct you in line, they're paid to a private individual who owns the contract for that particular, yeah,
But the
they're not
liabilities probably
Washington
still
State
sit with the
Ferries.
state.
What's that?
The liabilities probably sit with the state as far as they're concerned,
I don't know about that.
the contractor.
Okay, how many more questions, just to get an idea, do we have? We've got a couple there. Okay, why don't we?
Go ahead.
Yeah, Tim?
I'd like to bring up militarization of police. It's a constitutional issue, and nationwide. Can you comment on a couple things? First, does the county get any surplus military equipment, weapons, anything? Has it come or is it in the pipeline? It's part. The second is how much comes through Homeland Security? And the third one is how many deputies are former military? There is discussion nationally about the difference between an introduction to both firearms and policing when basically you're running a check stop on the airport to Baghdad. Very different from domestic peace officer work on San Juan, for example. How much is a military background for you an asset or even sometimes a liability? And how many members of your force are former military?
Okay, so the first question was about militarization and funding, or receiving
Any equipment,
Okay.
for example?
In the past we have, currently we're not, and there is nothing in the pipeline.
What did we get?
We got some AR-15s from the military at one point. We've gotten boat gear in the past from the military. think we've gotten like, maybe some night vision goggles or some sort of, some equipment like that that's not weaponized. It's just stuff that's useful for like the detectives or search and rescue type stuff. I'm sorry, what was the second part of the question?
How many of the deputies and their staff are former military, and do you see that as an asset or a neutral or a liability?
I think there's probably a third of our department is probably former military. I know there's 4 of us that were in the Marines alone. I served in the Marines. I served in Desert Storm, Desert Shield. I don't feel that I took any of that mentality. I don't bring one single lick of that that war type mentality to my job. And as far as is it a benefit, I think there are certain parts of the military that is. People from the military tend to be more mature. They have self-discipline. They're driven. I think when it comes to hiring people, whether you're hiring someone from the military or whether you're hiring the guy who's just a rent-a-cop, so to speak, the guy who works security, he can be just as dangerous as the guy from the military, the guy who really wants to be a cop. You know, it's the person you hire. It's not whether you were in the military, whether you weren't in the military, what you did in the military, what you didn't do in the military. It's what you have upstairs, and it's what you have in here, and your mentality towards law enforcement and just dealing with people in general. So do I don't put a ton of weight in the military, whether you were in the military or not, even being a veteran myself. I look more at the person. Do they align themselves with the way I think? Do they align themselves with kind of my morals and my values, and you know, questions are kind of geared towards that. So, yeah, it's kind of a case-by-case basis, really.
May I follow up? In terms of chain of command, one of the things that put forward in your campaign is that for the first time, the deputies had actually endorsed a candidate for sheriff. I think it was the first time ever. And there's a kind of play devil's advocate here, there's sort of a counter to that, that one of the reasons a sheriff is an independent elected official is that they need a little distance from the people that work for them in order to discipline and control, and that, well, a democratically controlled workplace where the deputies kind of elect their boss, which is a little bit what happened here. I mean, it kind of cuts both ways. Would you like to comment on that, on the role of you as an independent boss, kind of different from a platoon leader?
I would say ask my deputies what they think. I've already had to discipline a couple of people. Nothing major, or starting out with written reprimands, but I've done it to a couple of them, and I will continue to do it. It's to some people it might be an issue. To me, it's not. I am able to distance myself. I'm able to separate myself from that, having come from the ranks. Yeah, it can be difficult because I was friends. I still am friends with all of them. We're like one big family, really, but I also am able to discipline them. And I talked earlier about holding everybody to a higher standard, and I am sticking to that 100%. So, you know, if I have to discipline them, I'll discipline them.
Yeah.
And I don't have an issue with it. If they do, then I don't know what to say.
I'll call you back, I'm in a meeting.
If that answers your question.
Okay.
I think Carolyn had a question.
No, wasn't me.
Wasn't you? Was Tom?
What?
Do you have a question?
Somebody raised their hand over there.
Well, but you were going to ask one,
well,
aren't you? Let's go ahead and go.
Okay, so I have two, can I ask two questions? I'll ask one and then we'll see what happens. The state or the county passed laws about separation from whale watching boats, you know, the orcas, protecting the orcas and all that. There's some kind of separation that's supposed to be maintained. And I don't know exactly what has happened with enforcement of that. I know it's always been an issue of how is that going to be enforced. Do you have any role in that today? What do you do exactly?
We don't yet, but we're going to.
Okay.
We haven't. In years past, we kind of did, and then we didn't, and then we kind of did again. and then we didn't for a long time. We're
What's
going-
gonna change?
Yes.
Is this new boat is gonna
Yes.
change things?
Yes, and actually, I had forgotten to allude back to a statement he asked earlier about government funds. We do get money from the Department of Homeland Security, quite a bit of money, in fact, to operate that boat out on the waters around our county, protecting our county and making contacts on the water. So that is one area of government funding that we do get. And that helps fund that boat and that program, and that's going to help with the whales, it's going to help with boating under the influence, it's going to help with just possible drug interdiction, nighttime operations.
So will it be a full-time operation of that boat, or just sporadic?
It's going to be as full-time as we possibly can. The hard thing is, again, going back to what I stated earlier, I can't just hire somebody else. So that means we have to you either have to work people on their own time, which, they're more than happy to do. They'll come in and they'll work the overtime and they'll do it on the water. Or I have to take somebody off the streets and put them in a boat, well, 2 people actually, because you can't run the boat alone. 2 people off the streets and put them in the boat, so they're not in the community, stopping speeders, stopping people from hitting people, preventing vandalism, theft, whatever, responding to DVs. They're out on the water. So we'll put, during the summer months especially, we'll put as much emphasis as we can into that. That's one of my thoughts for the reserve program. Getting some of our reserve deputies. A lot of the people who have come to me about the reserve program have a lot of boat experience already and have expressed interest in operating the boat and being a part of that program. And to put them out on the water, then we can get a lot more time on the water.
Are volunteers compensated, or are they doing it for?
They haven't been. A lot of them just do it because they love it and they want to give back to the community. Whether there is a compensation in the future, it's something I've thought about. I haven't looked into it real in-depth yet. Step 1, get the program up and running and get the people interested and then step 2, we'll cross that bridge. This is a wonderful community of volunteers, and we're blessed, unlike a lot of other communities who people just don't care. People in this community are just amazing. All these communities, all the islands are amazing when they step up and want to help.
Yeah, back. You.
Steve.
I wanted to ask this question when you were talking about drugs, but I had to be a chauffeur. There was an interesting letter to the editor in the Sounder a couple of weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, from a couple that had been stopped on the street at night when they were walking, and they were upset at that. And then, unrelated, I heard a story about a relatively recent drug prosecution where the loudest advocate for the sheriff's office doing something, a neighbor, then wouldn't help when they actually needed the help to get something done to prosecute this person. There's definitely a schizophrenic kind of feeling in the community, do something about the problem, but don't involve me.
Yeah.
Have you thought about a community outreach that tries to get people in the community a bit more on board with helping the sheriff's office with these kinds of issues?
Well, I'll say I know the deputy who contacted those people on the street in Arcus, and he is absolutely nowhere near the way that article made him out to be. I don't know what happened there, why, but it is what it is. I've laid awake a lot at night trying to figure out how to reach out more to the community, how to get people involved more. I think it starts with, it goes back to that trust, really. If people don't trust that we're going to do our job, or people don't trust us, they're not willing to get involved. And maybe they'll never be willing to get involved anyways, because people are afraid that their name's going to get drug into it, or there's going to be repercussions because their neighbor's going to come after them. We rarely ever give up our sources. I've told people that for a long time. It's like my kids. You tell them, hey, I know what you're doing. Well, how do you know that? You don't need to know how I know that. I just know. I'm not going to give up my sources because then they'll never come talk to me again. So, chipping away at a little time, whether you're involving women on horses with a horse posse, a mounted posse, or you're getting, juveniles involved in an explorer program. As you start getting that community to come in closer and closer, and then pretty soon people will step up and they're like, yeah, I do want to help out, and all right, hopefully I will volunteer to help you out with it. Maybe, I don't know, I'm open to suggestions, really. Because I don't have all the answers.
Well, exactly, you're supposed to have all these.
Sometimes I like to think I do, but I don't always have all the answers. But like I said, I'm willing to try anything, and
I'd just like to ask a question of Roger here. Do we have any sort of a time frame that we're trying to wrap this up by, or are we going until the fall over?
Whenever people have had enough.
I think you had 6 o'clock in the morning.
Okay. Is there anybody else, because
Last question.
Last question. My last question.
I'll talk all day long. You guys want to ask questions?
The question has to do with drones. Are you concerned at all that drones are gonna be introduced, not by the police department, although that would give me some concern, but that, the public is gonna be flying drones around here? The people coming in the summertime, the kids are gonna have drones.
They already are?
They already are.
Of course there are.
Yeah, but is that something that you and other police departments around the country are thinking about? If it gets to a certain level, is that gonna be a public safety issue or whatever?
I haven't put any thought into it.
Okay.
I mean, if it becomes an issue, then we'll think about it.
Yeah.
But there are probably hundreds of issues that will be issues in the future that we have to deal with that we're not thinking about now. And we don't have drones. There's federal case law and regulations against law enforcement using drones. So, we don't have drones, we don't use drones, we don't have any plans to use drones. So. But as far as just your average kid, I bought a quadcopter for my son because he wanted one. He lives in Bellingham, but he flies it all the time and loves it. So it's just like a helicopter, it's just got 4 blades instead of 1. So. And he's 11. He's not going to be out doing anything nefarious with it. So.
Okay, any other questions? No?
That's not a question.
Tim's got one.
Go back to the drug situation. I attended a public meeting that the League of Women Voters put on with the local prevention coalition, I believe. And all the emphasis was on marijuana. My own kind of observations and nose says that the 3 drug problems that aren't the problem of the user, but the problem for the community, where there are other victims other than losing a couple points on your SAT test or something if you're using them. It's mainly pharmaceuticals, the opioids. Then it's powder drugs, meth, less extent, cocaine, and of course alcohol. Those are overwhelmingly, that's where people get beat up, and I know a young fellow grew up on Orcas Island who's doing a hard time now for drugs. He beat up his, that story. Is that the drug focus, or is there any, I'm a little concerned about a co-opting of both community and enforcement over marijuana issues compared to these really serious, violent, dangerous stuff with pharmaceuticals, powder drugs, and alcohol.
Well, I'll tell you, we have the resources, we have the people, we have the time to tackle it all. We're not constricted or bound to having to deal with just one issue: heroin, cocaine, meth. We definitely putting a ton of emphasis on that. But I work very closely with the Prevention Coalition. I'm on their board. And they go after the teen. They're more of the educational component. They've never, ever been able to adjudicate drugs out of a society, ever. They've been around for thousands of years. They've been illegal for thousands of years, and yet people still do them every day. You can't just arrest people day in and day out for drugs. That's, you arrest them, you put them in jail, they get out, they go right back to it again. There has to be an educational component. And when you start when you're trying to educate the adults, Yeah, some of that will work, but once you're an adult, you're kind of into it already, you're set in your ways. I mean, people can learn every day for sure, but the thing that the Prevention Coalition really focuses on is the young people, the young kids. Prevent them from doing it before it becomes a habit and a problem. So I think as far as law enforcement goes, our job is not just to be reactive and arrest people, arrest drug dealers. I mean, our job is to arrest the drug dealers for sure, always will be, and I will never lighten up on that. But like the drug users, yeah, they need to be dealt with in the judicial system as well, but they don't need to be dealt with just with the judicial system. There needs to be an education component, there needs to be somewhat of a rehab component, a prevention component. You gotta tackle it from all different areas. I can arrest the same person over and over and over and over again. And we do, and we always have, and you always will if you're not trying to help them solve the problem. And that's...
So is that happening here, with
Yeah,
like court
absolutely.
diversions and things like that?
Well, we don't have a drug court yet. It's my understanding that that's possibly coming. The last meeting we had, that didn't come up. But I think we have a the Compass Health has a fantastic program. A lot of people who are very good that want to help and try to help. And you know, it's the old adage: you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. But you know, if you're not leading the horse to water, he's never going to drink. So
We do have substance abuse related sentence alternatives.
Oh,
It's not drug court. Drug court's really more about the processes than it is about the treatment. But we do have those alternatives.
yeah, absolutely.
If I remember correctly, Sheriff Krebs, you've been with the force 8 years.
Yeah.
Is that right? And now you're starting your 4th month as the sheriff. And I'm curious, in your new position, how has your, what's different now for you as a law enforcement officer now that you're a sheriff versus on the streets as a deputy?
I think I see things a lot bigger. I see things totally different. If I understand you correctly, what's different for me personally being the sheriff versus being a deputy?
Yeah, I guess so. You know, your job description of what you do day to day as a deputy is this, and you get used to it. And you were for 8 years, and now you've stepped into a different role when you're at the top of the department. How is it different from a law enforcement?
The demand for my time is greatly increased. I spend a lot more time talking to other department heads. I spend a lot more time. I actually get to. I always had a philosophy as an officer, and you know, I get to actually make the department that philosophy now. So I mean, that's different. That's increased. My responsibilities when I go home at night, you know, I can take my hat off, take my belt off, and relax. That doesn't happen anymore because I get phone calls all night long. You know, it's always been kind of when I go to the grocery store, I can't just go to the grocery store. You know, go to the grocery store for a dozen eggs, should be 5 minutes. I'm home an hour and a half later because everybody talks to me and I talk to everybody. I mean, I guess that's kind of different, if that's kind of what you're getting at.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, it probably wouldn't hurt to be mindful of the fact that he is donating his time to be here.
No.
And, you know, but if we want to keep the questions coming, then what the heck?
I have a question, I guess, when we're done with these questions. Is there anything that you think I should know or that you want me to know? I mean, I hear all the questions, I know all your concerns, but is there anything that you would like to see of us, or anything you'd like to see us do different or better, or?
I'd like to know if you had more money, what you would do with it in the county, not your salary. But in the county.
What would I do with my department?
Yeah.
I would put a bigger emphasis on that boat. I'd put more patrols out on the water. Because I do believe our border is from the Canadian border. They bust people coming in from Whatcom County, coming in from Canada down to Whatcom County. I have to believe they're coming into ours as well. But I don't know until we put someone out there.
What people are these, Sheriff?
Drug dealers, drug transporters, people moving stuff back and forth. Whether they're stopping in our county or not, I don't know, but I would like to see more of an emphasis out on the water.
Could you do that, just stop them?
Yeah.
With no?
Well, no, not us alone. We would need to work with, I mean, we don't have the manpower, we're not trained to operate on the waters,
Right.
but we certainly could work with ICE, we certainly
Okay.
could work with Customs and Border Patrol,
Sure.
the people who are out kind of in the Whatcom County area. There's an air component to them as well. They're up in the air all the time, and they've offered their services to us. They're constantly flying over the same part of land in Whatcom County. They said, we'd love to come over and fly over new land, basically. So, yeah, I'd love to see what's going on at night. And at least when someone says, is there drugs coming in on the west side, I can say, well, can't guarantee it, but we're pretty sure they're not. Or, yeah, they are. Right now, we don't know. I mean, my answer is, I don't know. And I hate having the answer, I don't know. So.
You don't even have a suspicion, or?
Like I said, just the number of seizures they have over in Whatcom County, coming in above Lummi up there, Pecos area, I have to think that something's got to be coming down through our county, and I don't want it coming through our county. Bottom line.
I have a history question. When was the last time that a deputy or someone in the department fired a weapon other than in practice? I mean, actually, and when was the last time anyone shot at any of you guys? I mean, going back, has it ever happened in the whole history of the county that someone shot at
About
you?
5 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, we had a deputy on Orcas who responded to a residence for I can't remember why he responded, and a pit bull charged him, and he ended up shooting the pit bull at point blank. And the owner then came out of the house and was shooting at him in the woods. He was hiding in the woods. Last time, I don't know the last time we shot at somebody. I know it has happened in the past, but it was long before me.
Yeah.
You asked what we want from the community, and I think more forums like this. I'm really grateful to the organizations that put it on.
Yeah, I love this.
It really brings you into our community with a face and knowing, well, I think that generates to other community members that you're touchable, you're reachable, and you're there to serve our community. We appreciate that.
I'll come talk to your group anytime too you want. Just like I said, give me a call. I'd love to meet with people.
So, I think if the more you can involve volunteers in
100%.
the whole range of things you do, the better it's gonna be for the community, the better it's gonna be for you.
I agree.
So, the more you can expand that to the maximum possible, I think, maximum benefit.
Looks like Sandy has something in there.
I was wondering what the status was. There's been a push for an animal control officer, at least part-time, and I'm wondering if any progress has been made on that.
Yeah, we named John Zerby as our animal control officer. He is going to come on as a special deputy, and that's where we're gonna have the.
That's interesting, because he was retired for just a teeny bit of time, huh?
Yeah.
Now we got another job.
All right, Ron, is there a way to set up for the community to volunteer, to come forward to be reserve officers, or to work with the youth group? I can't even think of what it's
Not
called.
yet, but that will come.
Maybe on the website?
Yeah, on the website, the newspapers, when I get that reserve program, and it's not gonna happen the first part of this year, there's no way we can get it done before summer. It'd be nice if we had it before summer, but it's just not gonna happen. It'll probably be something that will start in the fall if, in fact, we can make it happen. I just spoke with Mr. Zerby yesterday. Yeah, and they've done 4 or 5 of them here in the past years, so, you know, I'm pretty confident we can get it done, and we'll put something on the paper, on the website, Facebook, word of mouth. But that's interesting. We'll figure something out, some way to make ourselves more accessible to people who do want to volunteer. And even I'll bring it up at every forum that we hold to.
Do you have a question? Yeah,
I'm sorry, I forgot about this whole topic and asking a question. So, when you're talking about training with deputies and such and getting policies in place, can you talk to us a little about the use of tasers and by the department, by the deputies, and when is one pulled? How do you determine all that?
That's kind of, and in each individual basis, determine when it's pulled. That's up to the officer. I'll tell you, it's, you know, a bigger guy like myself may not ever have to pull the taser because I can deal with people, you know, physically a little easier than maybe somebody who's slight and smaller. You know, that kind of all depends on what's going through the officer's head, how they feel, you know, how they think this is going to go. You know, taser's kind of a last resort next to lethal force. It's a less than lethal, so we don't have a serious history of taser use in this county. I can think of 3 or 4. Yeah, 3 or 4 probably over the last 7 or 8 years that I can think of. But considering the number of people that we deal with and the number of fairly violent arrests we've made, we don't have to resort to that very often.
I'm sorry, when you say 3 or 4, what's that?
Uses, taser deployments. 3 or 4 times we've deployed the taser.
Okay.
That I can think of. I mean, I don't quote me on numbers, but I'm going off my memory.
So you're comfortable with the procedures and policies in place with what you have for taser use within the department?
Yeah, our policy is a good policy. Training is, again, you know, we focus on taser training every time we go to the firing range. So.
Question about, have you made any changes to the department? I recognize that you have a new undersheriff, and a lot of people may not know him and might want you to introduce him. Also, you've hired a new detective, haven't you? Anybody else, any other changes?
Zach Reimer is, like I said, I alluded to him earlier. He's an individual who came from Whatcom County. He was a deputy in Whatcom County, married into the Wilson family. We have an opening on Orcas that we're currently filling, and we'll have a new deputy for that position. And
Rob knows on Lopez?
what's that?
Rob is on Lopez?
He is on Lopez, yes. But yeah, aside from that, there haven't been any major changes. Nothing major other than you know, the regime change right now.
You know what? Looks like we're just about there, doesn't it?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can I make one announcement before everybody leaves? On Monday the 13th, the League's membership meeting to which the public is invited is on domestic violence and sexual assault. And Sheriff Krebs will be there. Also Kim Bryan, the Director of the Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault Services, and Pamela something from the prosecutor's office.
And where is it?
It's at the library at noon, and everyone is encouraged to attend.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, very good.
Not a problem. Thank you, Roger. I appreciate it.